Hello. Welcome to the newest episode of my garage podcast. This episode, I'm not in my garage again. It's too cold out there. And even then, I just wanted to record inside. This episode is going to be talking about how the Fed cut rates this week on December 10th, if I'm not wrong. And this week was very interesting. Technically, it's my last full week of actual classes, and it was kind of weird to do because next semester I'm not taking as many classes because I already finished all my requirements, but I'm still deciding on what I need to do for my classes next semester and if there's anything I'm missing. And next week is kind of stressful for me because it's going to be when I have my math final, my Calculus 2 math final. And I'm on the cusp of having an A. It's this semester, the rest of my classes, I took 4 classes this semester, and the rest of them, 4 of them have in 3 of them I have an A, and then in my math class I have an 89.1, and it's so annoying because the 4th exam that I did, the 3rd exam, there was 4 exams total in the class. The 3rd exam, I made so many stupid mistakes because I don't even know. It when I look at it, it just makes me really mad. And there's just one question that I read completely wrong, and if I didn't read that wrong, I would literally got a 92. And my grade on it was an 87.5, and I just keep thinking about it over and over again. There's not much I can do about it, but it's just really stupid, and I guess it's just something to learn from. In my 4th exam, which was 2 weeks ago or a week ago, that one I felt pretty good about it. I felt pretty confident about it. And then my 2nd exam, I did really good. I got an A on that one. And then my 1st exam, it was before I was I don't know what I was doing, putting the amount of effort that I put into that and for the 1st exam, it was very lackluster. I wasn't spending as much time in trying to understand homeworks and realizing what work needed to be put into. And I realized the only way that you can fail a class is not putting enough time, or and that can mean not having enough time to put into it, or just generally not putting enough time into the class. The amount of work that you're just putting in the minimum amount of time and just completing assignments, not really doing anything extra than that. Or your teacher's just really bad. No matter how much time you put into it, your teacher's just so bad, and the course material is really hard. And I think that is the only way that you could fail a class is if the course material is really hard and your teacher is really shitty, and or because the course material is so hard, or you're just it's a simple class and you're just putting the minimum amount of effort into it, you that's how you fail a class. And unfortunately, it's just it's really an unfortunate situation because those 2 factors play into a lot. And I guess there's resources to tell how well a teacher's gonna be doing. In my Calculus 2, my teacher's really good, but I also have to put a lot of time into Calculus 2 because it's a really hard subject. Um, but for the most part, I think I thought Calculus 2 is pretty easy. I'm doing some polar series sequences, integration techniques. They weren't that bad for me. I was able to figure it out. And I think right now we're doing polar coordinates, and it's kind of annoying because we're still learning in it's a cumulative final. So excuse me, all the things that we learned from the semester, which is pretty obvious, um, that's gonna be on the final, and it's a 3-hour final. But I'm not sure how to feel about it because most of my most of my, or like the exams that I did have, the past four ones that I did, um, those ones were 2 hours long, and those were only like one section. So this one is all the sections, and I'm just a little nervous to see what it's gonna be about because uh, last semester when I took Calculus 1, an exam was like a class, so it was like an hour long, and then our final was 3 hours long. So, and even then, that was like 4 pages. I think hopefully there's like a lot less. Like my teacher was telling me like people finish it in like 2 hours or like somewhere between like an hour and 30 to like 2 hours and 30. Little bit of like a jump, and I get more time. Like in my last exam, it was just really bad. But after this, after this week, I go on break, and I'm just so excited. Because I don't like the beginning of the semester, I was putting in so much work. Like on Friday, I finished two classes because they're online, so I just took my final online. Or no, Saturday and Sunday, Friday and Saturday, I took two exams or two finals because they're online. And that was I put pretty much a bit. I put a lot of effort into it and just put like as much as I can, and I got a really decent grade in it. And so I'm just like, I just hope that I'm able to like push through, even though like I'm tired, and just do good on my calculus exam, and also have a paper right. I pretty much finished it. I just got to do a little bit of rewrites and just reformat it to make it seem better. Because honestly, writing I kind of struggle with, but I don't think they'll be that bad. Um, and that's due on Wednesday at like late at night. So I have from here to Wednesday to work on that. And I'm still learning stuff in my Callies too. So that my time has to be split between studying, homework, and just like practicing for the finals or for my finals and just rewriting them kind of. Um, um, so that's kind of how it's been for that. And I kind of want to get into what getting back into like the economy and some like major deals that have been happening or some um, or like basically what's been happening right now in the economy because on December 10th, which was if I'm not mistaken, what was December 10th actually? Um, God, sorry, trying to see what exactly when December 10th was. That was Wednesday, um, of this past week, and in short, the Fed once again cut the interest rates down to a quarter point, meaning that it's between 3.5% and 3.75%. And for the most part, these interest rates they affect like short term investments, and it's more in the affecting short term things like credit card loans, business loans, and just loans in general. And for when it comes to long term, those are affected by high yield interest rates, and those affect the long term, which those are like long term investments where people are buying like 5 year investments to pay off like a business loan or getting loans first to start a business or like partnerships and just the whole process that starts with that. And during this federal cut rate, there was a lot of discourse between the board members. Um, a lot of board members discussed that, or a lot of board members felt that this rate cut was not necessary. Like two voted against it, and then of course Stephen Mirren, uh, which is kind of a current a trend with him. he wants a more aggressive rate cuts, and he wants a half point rate cut. And he was kind of the only person to agree with a more aggressive rate cut. But for the most part, board members, well, I'll get more into it, but basically, what the hope is for the the what the Fed hopes to happen in a perfect world with these rate cuts is to stimulate the economy, and this is happening because, or this would happen because these rate cuts, what it does is it makes loans have less interest. So the longer that you have a loan, the less you're gonna have to pay back. The more like interest is like, in short, it's just like it's to match up with like standards of like money losing value, and like that's for especially for like long term investments where they, or it's basically just a charge on top of the of getting a loan. And with having interest rates cut, the hope is that people are going to be spending more, getting house loan, getting a house or loans, or spending more on the credit cards in hopes of stimulating the economy. The reason behind this is that it is more apparent to the Fed that the job economy is slowing or declining, and they are trying to combat it and just take on what, like, just trying to combat it and just like help out with the US job market and just anything in hopes of like getting businesses to 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 not lay off as much employees as they have. And so for the information I got for this is the Fed cuts rates again, signals it may be done for now, and it's by Nick Timiraos. I didn't know how to spell it, but basically, as I previously mentioned, the range is now between 3.5 to 3.75%, and this is the lowest it's been in 3 years. Um, and there was the board voted 9-3 when it came to the rate cut. Two saying that the rate cut was not necessary enough, and then Stephen Mirren again saying that it should have been more. For now, because of the government shutdown, the Fed is limited to the amount of information that they have to make decisions for the further reduction. And if they were to cut again the next time we meet in January, it would require a lot more information. And that's why they kind of decided, based off what they do have, that it's likely that that a 0.25 rate cut would be good. And based off this, when they meet in January again, they're gonna need a lot more information. They're gonna have higher standards when it comes to the rate cut um, because they're gonna have higher standards when it comes to what's gonna be needed for a rate cut. And Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, or the lead chairman, discussed that based on the information, the job market decline has started to cool off, pointing to a little bit of slowdown in the decrease of the job market, and it's kind of tapering off and showing that these rate cuts have been kind of giving a positive thing, been doing positive things. And this is at least why I believe, this might not be 100% factual, but based off personal speculation as to why rate cuts correlate to the job market and why they based their decisions on that information, is that companies can pay back their debts faster, having a good liquidity ratio, and that means that how fast a company can pay back debts, meaning that liabilities that companies have, like loans and paying employee salaries, can be done at lower interest rates, and they have more money to be able to spend on employees and have less interest on these loans. And that's kind of what I believe about it. And Wall Street was very happy about this. They were happy to see these rate cuts. For example, over the week, the past 5 days, the Dow Jones gained 1% this week, and it happened. And they're very happy for the fact there might be a potential rate cut in January. And and so basically, Stephen Mirren was the only person to agree for more aggressive rate cuts, and the other two that voted against this, saying that there shouldn't have been a rate cut at all, is the Chicago Fed president, Austin Goolsbee, and the Kansas City Fed president, Jeff Schmidt, are the only two that opposed the rate cut. And there was even more people that voted against this. But the way that the Fed works is that there are members, from my understanding, who just sit in on the meetings and their votes don't really count. And with this information, there are more members that are part of the decision. Many whom disagreed with this decision that there should have been a rate cut. This decision it came down to what Jerome Powell, the Fed lead chair, decided, and he had to convince the others that this was necessary and for them to join his side. Additionally, Powell's title as head chair is to expire in May, and he could only make 3 more decisions on whether or not to cut. And a lot of people are upset with this because they feel like the Fed should be more aggressive with their rate cuts. And even Trump, who I usually don't agree with, or who I don't agree with, he was also saying this. Or actually, get rid of that part. But basically, because of this information that Powell's term is coming to an end, Trump basically says time and time again that Powell should have a more aggressive one, and he agrees with those people that says he should be more aggressive when it comes to rate cuts. And due to this, Trump wants to appoint his own head. And what makes this scary is technically the Fed is part of the government, but it is an independent entity, meaning they don't have to follow as much as what the president says. And the president doesn't have much of a say in what the Fed does. Or they at least work with the government. And based off Trump's past track record with his tariffs and the more problems and more harm than good they've caused, what is to say he won't be aggressive with rate cuts and because of his aggressive approach to rate cuts, and I personally believe this is my bias. This is like not factual at all, but I can make an educated guess and say that at least when it comes to Trump and his decisions, they kind of go more towards benefiting his rich buddies, his friends that so if Trump were to get his own guy in, his guy would mostly talk about do more aggressive rate cuts and not only focus on companies and not really the average person. So if if the board were to vote in a new chair that Trump appointed, it would be a very scary thing and potentially would put the U.S. in an even worse situation than it is now, making the job market and the economy just fail even more. And previously what I stated, but basically they agree with Trump or some experts believe that Trump should be more aggressive with rate cuts because right now the way the economy is facing, it's similar to how it was in the 1970s. Oh, excuse me. During this period, there was during the 1970s, this was a period of stagflation where there was rising prices, but like nothing was being done to combat it, or prices are rising and nothing is staying this, or the amount of money that's being made, that's staying the same, and the Fed is making similar moves to how they were doing in the 1970s, and in which they didn't cut as much as they should have, and the Fed ended up doing nothing and affecting the economy, making it seem like the Fed was useless and during that period. But I feel like the key difference between now and then is the amount of information and technology that we have access to now, and tools, and kind of them, like, we can get more accurate predictions as to what would happen if there was more aggressive rate cuts. So when it comes to that, I can't really say. As far as I know, I feel like we can only really trust what they have. And it's definitely open that we can oppose them and just be and have critiques of it. But as far as I know, I can really only just like trust the Fed and just hope that they come to a solution, because it isn't also the Fed, it's also the decisions um, that the president makes. And so when it comes to January, ex- um, they're gonna have more requirements, and they're gonna have higher standards as to what is gonna be needed to cut. And the Fed feels like, since because they feel like the job market is starting to bottom out, meaning that it isn't there's not as many people claiming like unemployment or being a part of unemployment, so they're showing potential good signs. And the Fed feels because the Fed feels like it's starting to bottom out, they believe that there should be more than just the job market to consider with a cut. If they were to cut more, it could lead to serious problems that the Fed could not pull the U.S. economy out of. And information also, the Labor Department is to release unemployment data from October and November, uh, because during this cut, um, during this cut, the government shutdown wasn't affecting a lot of the decisions because they didn't have as much information to base their decision off. So that's why it was kind of like a it was kind of like a safe decision, and that's why um, some some of the board members didn't agree because they didn't have as much information, or at least that's a potentiality of the situation, is that because of the lack of information, they were kind of scared to cut because they didn't know what if it was a necessary thing to cut. And and during this next rate cut, this unemployment data from October and November, it's going to be considered as well. There's been a rise in jobless claims, giving evidence of a struggling labor market. But the Fed doesn't plan to cut in January. But if they get information from the bad information from the labor market, it will most likely start to cut again. Um, Sorry about the blender, but basically, for January's next meeting that they have, as from my understanding, the Fed meets once a month, and or at least for rate cuts and decisions like this, they meet once a month. They all the chairs, and they meet for like 2 to 3 days and just discuss, or at least try to convince the other people why it's a necessity for these rate cuts, or what the Federal is going to be doing moving forward. And so in January, the next meeting, a lot of people were believing that there wasn't going to be one in December and was most likely going to be in December. Or there's not going to be one in December and was most likely going to be in January. And that was due to a lot of people knowing that the government shutdown affected the amount of information. So a lot of people were, there were some people that are surprised about this. And it clearly made Wall Street very happy. Or at least, well, at least when it comes to Wall Street, like stock indexes like the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 and the top one, like the blue chip stocks, they were very happy to hear this. And I just want to say, or at least that's what I have for this video. I just wanted to talk about the economy, kind of decisions that happened this week, or at least the most important one. And I just want to say thank you guys and please continue watching.